Hi, everyone. I'm Shannon Libert, Senior Partner with Kingsley Gate Partners, and I'm thrilled to be joined today by my friend and healthcare executive, Jennifer Grove. I've known Jennifer since high school, so we won't talk about how many years that has been. We're professionals here, and this is a professional setting, not a personal setting, but it's a little tricky when you've known someone as long as we've known each other. She is currently serving as the VP of External Relations for Baptist Healthcare in Pensacola, Florida. Jen has an interesting career. She started in consulting after graduate school and then spent 26 years in the energy industry. And that's an interesting pivot, Jen. So welcome and tell us how you ended up in healthcare.
Thank you, Shannon. It is so exciting to be here and to have known you for so many years. And now in this professional collegial relationship as well. And yeah, quite a jump from energy industry to healthcare, and quite a time for that jump since I came into healthcare in January of 2019. And I really did make that pivot because I have been working in the greater Pensacola community now for 25 years. And this community has been incredibly generous to me personally and to my family. And I had the great pleasure of getting to work with Gulf Power and the Southern Company for 25 years. We were going through 3 years ago when I left through a sale of Gulf Power to another organization that would have taken me out of Pensacola quite a bit. And I wanted to make sure that toward the final years and chapters of my career that I am in an organization that is still community-based, really dedicated to a mission of serving this community, because this community has been so good to me for so many years.
Yeah. And we were talking earlier, you talked a little bit about some of the similarities between healthcare and another highly regulated industry, such as the energy industry. I was also thinking about the similarities in terms of sometimes we have emergencies in the Gulf Power world, like a hurricane, where you're taken away from your family for a period of time, not dissimilar to a pandemic, not comparing the two, but they're both pretty significant in terms of the disruption that they've caused for many folks. And you've managed that, and I've watched you balance kind of work and family. And so that's what we're going to dive into that in just a few minutes. But before we get started, for those of us those folks who are listening who may not be familiar with Baptist Healthcare, I can cheat a little bit since I live in this community and I know it very well and used to work for an affiliate. But tell us about Baptist and where you are and where you're headed on this journey, and what is external relations, because I'm sure some of our viewers may want to understand that a little more.
Yeah, sure. So let me start with Baptist. Baptist is really our area's only remaining not-for-profit, locally led and locally governed health system. And we are headquartered in Pensacola, Florida. We do operate 3 hospitals: Baptist Hospital, which is our flagship hospital that opened over 70 years ago now. In October of 2021, we actually celebrated our 70th anniversary of seeing our first patient. And Baptist Hospital was born out of a need in the early 1900s in our community for higher quality healthcare. And in fact, a woman died giving childbirth, and members of her church came together and said, wait a minute, we can do better in this community. And ultimately, that's how Baptist Hospital initially was born. And then we grew into the Baptist healthcare system, where we also have Gulf Breeze Hospital on the peninsula in Santa Rosa County, as well as Jay Hospital. We have the Andrews Institute for Orthopedics, and multiple medical parks, and a growing practice of providers throughout our system. And external relations for Baptist means that I have responsibility for anything that has to do with our external stakeholders. So our foundation, our marketing and communications, both for external communications as well as internal communications, our faith and community health network. Part of how we live out our mission of helping people throughout life's journey is through dedicated relationships with subpopulations in our community, including nearly 80 church congregations. And then all of our community impact opportunities. So whether that is sponsorships and donations, or leader service on community boards, or volunteerism of our team members, or our community benefit, and our community health needs assessment and community health improvement plans, all that goes along with healthcare in that world. That's what external relations is.
Very good. Very good. Yeah, it's beyond kind of the community, and you have marketing and legislative affairs and all of that.
I do have government relations. I can't believe I forgot that.
Yeah.
We just ended Florida session this year. So yes, and I will say there are similarities between the regulated nature of the industries, but the payment environment and the public policy that goes along both with payment and just governance of healthcare. I understand why Mark Faulkner, our president, has shared with me that I believe Peter Drucker said the American hospital is the most complex organization that has ever been designed.
Yeah, absolutely. And you were experienced in visiting the legislature prior to working for a not-for-profit community health system, but a different world when you're representing Gulf Power versus a independent pillar of the community hospital. Real quick, we are in the process of having a brand new hospital in our community. So talk about that timeline and all
so
that.
Baptist Hospital has served our community very well for 70 years. But in the late 40s, when we began construction, the ceiling heights and the knowledge of how light and color and texture can absolutely aid healing. We didn't have all that then. So we have had to make the decision to build a new hospital campus. It's time to upgrade our facilities, and we are thrilled that we've been able to put together a much more accessible location, really for the broader region that we're serving now, right at the right at the intersection of Interstate 110 and Brent Lane. A new 57-acre, $636 million campus that will open fall of next year. We're so fortunate that our clinicians, nurses, physicians, other care providers had really moved through the majority of the deep design work that we completed, believe it or not, in February of 2020. March 4th of 2020, we had the fourth presumptive positive, remember that's what we used to call them, COVID patient in the state of Florida. And thankfully, we had done a lot of the design work that allowed our partners at the construction site to go ahead and continue to move forward. So we're on schedule and actually, believe it or not, on budget to be able to open fall of next year.
Yeah, that's amazing. And just to watch the progress is pretty neat being part of this community. And the people who are served by Baptist will continue to be served by Baptist, and perhaps even more people, just given the way the population goes. So thank you for giving us an update on that. So Jen, we'll dive in. You are a busy executive with a full life. How do you balance career, personal life, passions, and is there such thing as balance? Is there balance?
That's such a great question. And I know particularly in women in leadership conferences, this topic comes up so often. And I'll tell you, my experience after I shared with you earlier before we started recording, I don't know why I began thinking about this morning. I've been working 30 years now. And I'll tell you, my perspective on balance has definitely developed over those 30 years. And I really think that we need to get rid of this concept, because it is a construct that the world puts on us, or worse yet, we put on ourselves, that is really not achievable, because I think we tend to think about balance in time-limited circumstances. And my experience has been, I need to free myself from the expectation that I can balance within a day, within a week, maybe even within a month. I think it's important to think about all aspects of our life, but never to expect that we're going to be in direct, proper balance. There are times in our lives when our family is going to demand more of us than our work. There are other times when our careers need to demand more, or maybe our extended family or our friends or our church or our hobbies or our community. And I think that it's unfair for us to feel bound by the need to balance, because sometimes our schedule is beyond our control, and the weight of not balancing and the burden that comes with that when you feel like you think you should, or worse yet, the guilt that comes with it, particularly when it comes to being with family. I think that that's just an unfair burden that we place on ourselves, and we need to think about it as seasons of our career and our life, not necessarily a balance within some sort of finite time period. Now, I think it's really important to come up for air every now and again and really think about where are we spending our energy and our time? Because it can get in total out of balance for too long. And that's an opportunity to just come up, take an inventory of what's going on and then redirect, make these little changes that we need to start investing time in other directions. Definitely where we spend our time dictates the direction we're headed in professionally, as a wife, as a mom, as a friend, as a daughter, sister, all of those roles that we play. So it is important to come up for air and really evaluate how are we divvying up our time and energy, because it is not limitless. And we got to be thoughtful and proactive about it. And it's going to get out of whack. And we just got to give ourselves grace when that happens. And then realize, you know what, today is another day to start again and to try to start inching back in a direction that I feel like it's like a pendulum. And as long as we're aware of where we are on that pendulum and have the opportunities to kind of redirect and course correct along the way, I think we're going to live much more fully and have a lot less guilt than if we're trying to strive for balance in a day, in a week, in a month, whatever it is.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I appreciate that you are such a role model for me in this regard, because invariably every year you take an anniversary vacation, you usually go to the Keys with your husband, and you've done that for as long as I've known you. And you go with your family on, road trips to Maine often, and you have those things that are sort of non-negotiable. But you are able to still, the world doesn't fall apart because you're gone, even though you're critical to the organizations that you serve. But I know you're like the rest of us. We're always, one text, one phone call, one email away, but it's important to unplug and, being able to balance that is, balance is, I think I love the way you put that. Like, we gotta stop, thinking that it's something that is an ideal, because it's gonna vary.
It's not about being even, Steven. And I would say it is so important to unplug, but I'm still a work in progress on this, but it's also important for us to realize and to honestly see that us stepping back a little bit doesn't mean the world stops. What it does mean is that we have planned proactively to assure that the world goes on. And that's whether it's at home with our family or at work with our responsibilities. And that provides opportunities for others to grow in their skill sets and be able to step in. So it is great for us to mentally kind of check out a little bit and refill our spirit and our heart and our mind and our soul, and then come back. But that's important for the work itself, because if things are going to fall apart when we're gone, we haven't done a good job really preparing the work and the organization because we're not always going to be here. And I will say earlier in the 30 years, and I think probably because of the time I went to grad school in 1990, and, back then it was, super competitive, and we really were trained to believe that we needed to be the center of the work, and that, you had to constantly show what you could do, or the organization would forget about you. No, I think you really need to build a proper organizational structure and talent level to be able to execute on the goals, whether you're there or not. That's really our role as a leader, not to be the person driving us in that direction, but establishing the infrastructure and the bench strength of talent to be able to continue that momentum long after we're gone, or when we're gone for vacation for a week or what have you.
Right. No, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for that. So we both know the importance, and we've talked over the years about of having mentors. What steps can our listeners take to build that type of relationship?
Great question. And I tell you, what I've looked for in mentors over time, and that process has definitely changed. What I would recommend is not thinking of it as like, oh, I've got to select one mentor and that's the person. I would think about having a network and really evaluating folks around you. And I don't mean just at work, not just professional colleagues or other leaders in the organization that you're in, but in your whole world, in your whole life, and look for what are the specific traits that you see in them that you'd like to incorporate into your own personal and leadership style. And then talk to them specifically about that. Shannon, I loved how you led that meeting the other day. And I was particularly struck by the way you engaged everybody in the dialogue. Would you mind if we grabbed a cup of coffee sometime and talked about that? I'd really like to learn from you. Things like that, instead of would you be my mentor? Because that sounds like a major commitment. That some people are probably like, wait a minute, what does that mean to you? Because I know what it means to me, or it's this really continuum. And just start small with a cup of coffee or a glass of wine or lunch one day, or a quick Zoom chat, whatever it is. And then as you have that discussion with that person, that could be a one and done. Or it could be something that you want to really grow into a relationship, but just don't try to ask for the whole enchilada at the beginning. Just start out with something specific that you'd like to learn more about from that person. And the other thing I would say is make sure that you understand going into these relationships that you build, that it will be a two-way relationship, a dialogue, because they will learn from you as well. I know I've entered into these kind of discussions before, and I've gone in with all my questions, especially when I was younger, all my questions and, all of that. And then they would ask me a question. I'd be like, what? But we all want to learn from each other. The other thing I would say around mentors is don't only look at females as mentors. I mean, there's a lot to learn from everybody in our world and in our professional pathways, and make sure that you are really focusing in on the leadership traits that you're trying to emulate, regardless of what kind of body those traits come in, and then build that network. And it's building a network instead of just having a mentor or two mentors, I think is also important, because our needs for growth and our interests and passions really do evolve over time. And when you have a broader network, you're much more likely to have folks in that network that when you're going through an experience and would really like a sounding board, or you have an idea that you want to kind of brainstorm with someone on, having a broader network gives you a lot more to work with to help you with your own personal growth and developing your own thoughts.
Yeah, I love that, because I think this old idea, people might say, oh, I have to find a mentor and she has to be a woman and she has to be in the same field as me and she has to, it's not constrained. It can be, I have many male mentors, as I know you do as well. I have many female mentors, you being atop that list, not only for professional, but for personal. You have 4 boys, and any time I have a situation with my one son, I can count on you to give me sound advice, because perhaps at least one of your kids has experienced something similar.
Pretty much everything, I think. Yeah.
So I was thinking about
your point too, Shannon. I would say it is important to think about, one thing I didn't mention, but with balance, I think it's really important for any of us, and particularly when we're in leadership roles, to be engaged in the community in some way, through service to a nonprofit, maybe in a leadership role on their board, or through just donation of our own personal resources or talents into the community. And I think we can really also grow in that network of mentors, and really just thinking of them as coaches in your own tribe, when they include folks not just from our industry or from industry in general, but from nonprofit organizations, from local civic government, whether it's city, county, what have you, your legislative delegation, your church, your, just any of these other social groups. I think it's really important that that network is broad and diverse in many ways, because that helps build both you as an individual and build those relationships that then you will have throughout your life, not just for a specific role that you're in.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. So being in a leadership role, and especially in healthcare or energy, or, most industries these days, being in a leadership role can be really stressful. How do you like to unwind? I know the answer, but I'm curious to hear.
You mentioned some things. I definitely love, I'm one of those people, I love to be with my family. And I have loved it at all ages. We do have 4 sons, and they range in age now from 18 to 33. And we now have a grandson that will be 2 next month. And I love traveling with family. And honestly, I'm not sure if I like planning the vacations or actually taking them more, but I also enjoy planning them. So my husband will tell you, Ray will tell you, I'm always in the state of planning the next trip, quite literally, even when we're on a trip, planning the next one. And there's something about that just propels me forward. I love making memories with people that I love. And so traveling, time with friends, Shannon, you and I have our girls group. That's so important, just to have a touch point that is constant throughout your life, even as other things change. And then I also like to get away. I love to just go to the beach. I love to snorkel with Ray and look for shells, and I have hobby jobs. I love to make jewelry and to paint things that, in my career, throughout my entire career, I've never had a role where you can see an immediate finished product of anything. And I think that's why I enjoy the creative process so much, because for good or bad, I can create something that could be done and I can look at it. And sometimes it brings other people joy, which is fantastic. But even when it doesn't, I get to finish something. I'm a check it off the list kind of gal. And the kind of work that I do, there are very long-term payoffs and long-term outcomes. So it's important for me to have things that I feel like I can kind of complete and then move on to something else. So that's how I like to unwind. And, you talked about being away. I'm one of those people, I think people have different perspectives on this. I'm one of those people that if I'm on a vacation, I'm going to check in on my email and my work periodically. And it's not because I think things aren't going to be done well or right or what have you. It's because I don't want to be so far behind and out of the loop when I get back. It stresses me out when I'm on vacation more to think that I have this mountain of things that I'm unaware of. In this current role that I have, I don't really have the opportunity to totally disconnect anyway. But that's how I choose to approach it. Other people are like straight up, I'm on vacation, I am out. That gives me anxiety because then I don't know what I'm coming back to. And I feel like it would take forever to dig out. So I'm one of those people who kind of stays in touch when I'm away, but definitely enough getaway, even if it's just a weekend, just a walk on the beach, a paddle boarding, a couple of hours, whatever it is, just to recharge and get right back at it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm similar in that regard. Like it stresses me out to turn on an out of office. And, I know people do that, but I want to know, not because I love what I do, I want to know. And you're connected and you care very deeply about your organization. It's not that you think they can't function without you. It's that you want to be there or at least look at your email to make sure that you can't send a quick, a quick thought or two. And then you won't have to, to your point, make that, climb that mountain of work that's remaining.
And to your point, it's so funny. I've tried turning on the out of office and then I answer things anyway. And people are like, you do realize I'm getting out of office from you every time we exchange an email, right?
And you respond.
Clear. Yeah, exactly.
It's another, yeah. Well, to your point about your hobby job. So it's very handy to have a friend that makes beautiful jewelry. You can't really see, but I'm wearing Jen's designs and usually are most days. When my husband says, what do you want for Christmas? I said, just go to Jen's house. And he always picks something and then we have something and then yes. So it's very handy. And to your point also about our girls group, we missed you the other night, but it's nice to be able to catch up. And you had an event with one of your kids, as I recall. You went and saw a musical, and that was important because you're
talking about that. Our youngest son is graduating from high school this year and is going to be leaving. And so I am feeling, we've done our job. Our kids are all leaving. That's what we're charged with. But thinking about your seasons of life and your career and how you balance, certainly when the kids are younger, there are a lot of frequent needs. As they get older, there are still things that they need you for, but they're spread apart a little bit more, but they take more time. And then as you approach these milestones, like for us about to be empty nesters, I think about, oh my gosh, I want to make sure I'm enjoying every moment I can before he goes, because time is fleeting and we can have our heads down or on our task list or in our email or, jumping from Zoom to Zoom. And before we know it, we come up for air and months have passed by. So that is one of the deliberate things I'm trying to do before he graduates and goes away to college, is making sure I'm balancing now and scheduling in that time. We're the only people that can be in control of our calendars. And it's become a habit for me to say things like, I'm sorry, I can't be there. My calendar is not my own, or I'm not in control of my calendar. That's wrong. That's a cop out. I am. And if anybody's going to be, it needs to be me, nobody else. And so, we need to really be thoughtful about our limited time and energy that we have and how we're spending it, and even be proactive and schedule things in. And I am definitely a work in progress in this area, but it's something I'm constantly striving toward to maintain that kind of total life balance.
Yeah. You knew. I mean, you knew when the text went out about everybody getting
Oh,
together
yeah.
and whatnot,
Yeah.
and you said, "Oh,
Can't do
sorry,
it.
I'm
Yeah.
at this event with Scotty," and so that was important. And nobody gave you grief about it. They were like, "Oh,
That's
that's
right.
important.
That's right.
Please, kind of wish we
And I
were
like
going."
the political fundraiser early to do it. I just did a drop by, drop the check. Hey, I'm here to support you, and on to meet my son and his friends for dinner. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Well, we'd like to ask our guests to share one prediction for their industry. And I realize in our industry, in the healthcare industry, it's particularly important considering the time that we are in, the time that we've come out of. Can you share your top prediction for the remainder of this year and beyond as far as the healthcare industry goes?
I've had this discussion in the context of both recruitment at all levels of the organization. We're running, as I'm sure every healthcare organization is, a significantly higher number of vacancies, and our contract labor prices are, incredibly out of the norm and have been throughout the pandemic. And then also related to marketing and communications. And I think the prediction is we're never going back there. You know what I mean? I think that in times of significant change, people yearn, and I had our division meeting, our Zoom with everybody on the Hollywood Squares the other day. We were talking about change and what does it mean for everybody on all the teams that are in the external relations division. And I think people yearn to get back to a place when we're going through so much uncertainty. But I think it's also important to understand, Mark and I have discussed, when organizations or industries or people go through significant change like we have over the last couple of years, there are really three things that can happen when you come out of it. You can regress, meaning you can go backwards to lower performance, lower outcomes, having to build some of the fundamentals again. You can return to where you were before, or you can really relaunch. And I think that this industry, for a variety of reasons, because of how consumerism has been, really growing into healthcare, because of the pandemic and some people leaving this industry permanently as a result of the pandemic, others being called toward it, because of how we've had to literally pivot on every single level of service that our industry provides. I think we got to be looking at that relaunch, and we need to not be thinking about, if we started here on something and then we were over here, we're not trying to get back here. We might not even be trying to get here. We might be headed over here, and really be thinking about, for our industry, how can we come out of this? The other thing I'd mention, just from a pure brand and trust, our vision is to be the trusted partner for improving quality of life in the communities we serve for all people, whether we serve them or not. And I would say, I think we all saw, particularly in Florida, that, throughout the pandemic, the public trusted healthcare. They trusted healthcare leaders and others for the real information on what's going on within the pandemic. That's an opportunity for our industry that we need to think about. How can that help our industry remain, and particularly for the kind of healthcare organization that we are, really a vital component of our community infrastructure that they can count on for the long haul.
Yeah. And as you were sharing that, I was reminded I was on a call with Mark, your CEO, who's fantastic, as we know, and he said, yeah, they were asking because it was after another surge, and he said, I was on the phone with the city, and they said, I told them to go ahead and have that gallery night because it seemed to be things were okay, but they trusted the local healthcare executives to say, is this a good idea? Is this a bad idea? Where are we? And, it's a real partnership and pivotal to the communities. Like you said, whether, many of the attendees at an outdoor event are, may or may not be patients at Baptist Healthcare, but Mark is committed to the health of the community. You were all committed to that. So it's really important. So I have one final question. This has flown by the way. We feel like have really covered a lot of ground. So thank you for being so insightful as you always are. One final question. Share with us some great leadership advice you have gotten from someone, in your life. And then perhaps maybe if there's anything that you weren't given that you wish you had been given in terms of advice early on.
I had so many opportunities to learn from others. And one that stands out that I've used in multiple aspects of my life, raising kids and other aspects as well, in addition to my career, is that fear and excitement feel the same way in your stomach. So don't run away from it. And,
Oh,
I think sometimes all of us, and maybe particularly women, I'll speak from my own personal experience, as I have moved through my career and grown, I have always been somewhat afraid of that next step. And, you got to really think about what is that fear about, and how much of it is actual excitement, and really try to analyze that so you can bring into your next role the confidence that you can do it, because you can. I mean, people have asked me, is your job hard? No, it's not hard. It just takes time and attention. And sometimes there's not enough time, especially when you're new in a role or an industry, it's hard to know how to divide your attention and where to focus when. But I think it's really important to understand that feeling is what's going to propel you to grow. And if you don't have that feeling about something, maybe that's not the right direction to head. But I loved it when somebody said that, because it is that kind of butterflies, kind of fear, kind of excited feeling. And they do feel the same way. So don't be afraid of it, run toward it, not away from it. And then in terms of what I wish I had known, honestly, and this might be somewhat because of the age that I grew up in. Like I said, grad school, 90 to 92. I went to Purdue for grad school, and then worked in Chicago first, then Atlanta. And I really grew up creating multiple versions of myself. So there was Jenny, me to my friends and family. Then there was Jennifer, because I thought that's working for an international consulting firm, you had to have like a legit full name. I don't know, not something where I used to change my Y to an I and dot it with a heart. I don't know. And then there was Jen to others, where I wanted a little more casual. And what that did was made it really difficult for me to to understand really who my authentic self was, and to bring it fully to all of my roles, whether it's work or mom or wife or friend or sister. And I always felt like I was navigating. And so what I wish I had understood younger is we need to explore all aspects of ourselves and really develop them fully and bring them all to everything that we do, not to create different versions of ourselves that we think the people, the stakeholders in that part of our world want to see us be. No, fully develop who we are and be that person always. It makes it easier for people to know where they stand with you, and people like you and I who have relationships that bridge between personal and professional. And honestly, it's a much richer way to live life. It is, you're much more connected than to every hour of your days, as opposed to feeling like you're kind of a cardboard cutout version of yourself that is who the female executive is supposed to be. And really connecting in and being an authentic leader, you build trusting relationships, you give yourself grace more freely, I've found, because I am going to have to continue to learn. I am going to mess up along the way in all aspects of my life. And if I can embrace it all as one, hopefully that's not going to happen in all the different buckets of my life all at the same time. And then I can be buoyed in the areas that, I feel like we're kind of doing well in, when things come down a little bit in some other areas. And so I think be one authentic version of yourself and grow yourself fully in all ways, not just in one way in your life. That's what I wish I had understood earlier. And I'm trying to get there now and share that with as many folks as I can.
thank you, Jennifer, Jenny.
All of the above. I'm going to go with Jen. Yes.
We were joking about, in your organization and how I have to consciously think about, but it's when you know someone and you have done a nice job of evolving and integrating all of those people into the wonderful woman I see, who's my friend and my mentor. So thank you for taking the time to do this. We look forward to continuing to see great things coming out of Baptist Healthcare, and just as you transition into being an empty nester, I know you'll enjoy that phase, and your kids are amazing as well, and they'll come back and visit, because the oldest ones do, right?
Thank you so much. It's been so fun and great to spend time. And I appreciate the opportunity just to pause and reflect. It's kind of back to what we talked about earlier. Doing things like this really does help you think about being intentional about the areas of your life that you want to improve and how you want to continue to grow as a leader. So thank you for that opportunity.